This week on LTC News, a grand opening for pot in Lowell.
It's great. No more having to hide about it, you know.
A pledge to stop domestic violence.
The importance of respecting women and girls.
And St. Patrick's Day laughs for charity.
What do you call an Irishman that gets arrested? A leprechaun.
Stay with us. Welcome to LTC News. I'm your news anchor, Alanna Flood. On March 14th, Senator Ed Kennedy hosted the annual St. Patrick's Day dinner at UMass Lowell's Inn and Conference Center. Elected officials from Greater Lowell, along with Governor Charlie Baker, told jokes, roasted each other, and had a few laughs to benefit a local charity.
And this year's proceeds will benefit the Lowell Community Health Center's teen block and a variety of programs that provide education, support, and leadership opportunities to young people in the community.
An elderly Irishman was stopped around 2 a.m. by the police and was asked where he was going at that time of night. The Irishman replied, I'm on my way to a lecture about alcohol abuse and the effects on the human body, as well as smoking and staying out late. The police officer was mystified and he said, really? Who's giving that lecture at this time of night? He said, that would be my wife.
Bets were made how often I would use my former title, and if you recall, it was decided last year that it would cost John Chumley and some of his friends at least $50 every time I mentioned my former position. So, John, I'm not going to mention my former job. But, Representative Golden, what high school did you graduate from?
The Lowell High.
Who's your headmaster?
Bill Samaras.
See, John, I didn't say headmaster. Whoops.
And on a serious note, of course, I'm absolutely thrilled that Jim Campanini's not sitting right there, because he would come up with some interesting way to humiliate me in paper tomorrow. Lori Trahan had been here but had left because she had other places to go. I thought to myself, well, I looked over at Dave and I said, well, isn't she like from Lowell? I wonder if she's the new Marty Meehan.
A funeral service was being held for my dear friend, Kevin Murphy. And at the end of the service, the pallbearers are carrying out the casket when they accidentally bump into a wall, jarring the casket. They hear a faint moan. They open the casket to find my pal, Kevin Murphy, still alive. Kevin goes on to live 10 wonderful years. 10 years later, ceremony again is held, same place, same church. The pallbearers are walking out, people are weeping, they're crying. Kevin's wife yells out, "Watch out for the wall!"
Our pal Roddy Mum was new to America here, and he was out one night when he had first came over, and he's out driving in a snowstorm one night. He pulled over, a plow came by, and Roddy followed it. So about 45 minutes later, after Roddy is following the plow, the truck driver pulls over, and he gets out of the truck, and he walks up to Roddy, and he says, can you tell me what you're doing? And Roddy says, well, my good friend Kevin told me if I ever get stuck in a snowstorm to follow a plow. The guy just kind of looked at him and said, okay, I'm all done in the Walmart parking lot. Do you want to follow me over to Home Depot?
So what is the difference between an in-law and an outlaw? One is wanted.
What do you call an Irishman that gets arrested? A leprechaun.
This is the longest a comedian has ever gone without offending half the people in the room. I am not going to offend anybody except the Republicans. So the governor is safe.
As usual for this event, the room was full and the teen block program was pleased. Patriot Care has been open as a medical marijuana dispensary in Lowell for over 3 years. On Saturday, March 16th, it opened its doors as a purveyor of adult-use recreational marijuana products. The company invited city officials and the press to view the facility and to reiterate their commitment to doing business in the area.
We have been in the community serving as an employer, and we are one of the largest employers in the area. In addition to this dispensary, right down the street, we have our cultivation center, and we have our national shared services right down the street. Our shared services includes finance, HR, legal, compliance. And I'm happy to say that we are continuing to grow and will be hiring additional employees from the local community.
Mayor William Samara said that although he didn't originally vote for the sale of recreational marijuana in the state, he is satisfied that the company has been performing safely and legally.
I had concerns, but the people of the state voted for it, the people of the city of Lowell voted for it. And what I wanted to make sure was that all the standards were met. And I want to commend the city manager and Patriot Care for ensuring that not only have they met the standards, they exceed the standards that have been established by the state.
One, they've been here for 3 years, and so we've had a pretty good track record with them. Two, in getting ready for this phase of the business, the adult use, they have been completely cooperative with the city, with the police, with our traffic engineer, and really have not refused to do any of the requests that have been put on them. And I think we are, if anything, over-prepared, so the least amount of impact hits the neighborhoods.
As they come through, they'll meet the front desk. They'll show their ID to ensure they're over the age of 21. They'll then be moved on to this staging area here where they'll stand in line and they'll wait for the next sales agent to be ready to take them and perform their service. They'll then walk right out the door, right into their vehicle. We have plenty of security that'll make sure that they're off-site quickly.
Products are produced locally and comply with the strict guidelines set forth by the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission.
We have a comprehensive portfolio of products, which includes a range of products, including like concentrates. We have edibles, but our mission is really to provide the highest quality products that are the safest, most reliable for the people who come through our doors.
So I think the people of the city should know that, yes, we have this service to the city, but it's been well-developed. It's a place with great security, and it is a place that now I believe you have over 100 employees.
We do.
And probably will double that in the next few years.
Adult use customers started lining up at 8:30 on the first day of sale.
It's great. No more having to hide about it. Waited this long, so might as well give the people what they want, right?
What are you gonna get? Do you know?
Flour. Gonna get some flowers, maybe some edibles. Who knows? I have a paycheck on me, so.
Medical marijuana customers were afraid that they would have to wait in the long lines along with the recreational users, but they had their own short line and were allowed in before the adult use group.
They had my stuff.
See, you're all set.
Parking in front of the dispensary is reserved for medical users. Satellite parking sites have been set up with shuttle service for adult use customers. The city will get a percentage of the business's revenues and a share of the sales tax collected.
That way you actually, you're paying for the quality.
3% of our revenue goes to the city of Lowell. And then there's an additional 20% sales tax, of which 17% of that sales tax goes to the state and 3% goes to the city of Lowell.
When we crafted this fiscal year's budget that we're currently in, we intentionally did not account for any revenue. It looks like we will have some revenue in this fiscal year, but we wanted to be very conservative about that.
Sales revenue numbers are not yet available for Lowell as of this taping, but in the first week of March, 10 Massachusetts dispensaries generated $4,431,000 in sales. The first Thursday in March has been observed as the White Ribbon Day since 1991. The White Ribbon Campaign is a global movement of men and boys working to end male violence against women and girls. One woman is beaten by her husband or partner every 15 seconds in the U.S. On Thursday, March 7th, local civic leaders, along with area men and boys, gathered at City Hall to support the cause.
This is such an important day. It gives us an opportunity here in the city of Lowell and beyond to recognize the importance of ending domestic violence.
Domestic violence is a violent confrontation between family or household members involving physical harm, sexual assault, or fear of physical harm. They are learned behaviors that one person uses to dominate, intimidate, and manipulate.
The last thing anyone should be worried about is being a victim of a crime in their own home. And that is exactly what domestic violence is a crime.
Lowell police responded to fewer domestic dispute calls in 2018 than in 2017. Still in 2018, there were over 1,800 domestic dispute calls, with over 200 of those being witnessed by children.
The cycle of violence is perpetuated as children learn that this abusive behavior is an acceptable way to express their frustration and to dominate or control their victims.
Superintendent Kelly requested help from the public in reporting suspected domestic violence.
We must ask the public for their help as we do in other cases and other crimes. By asking if they see something, they must say something. There are several avenues to alert us about these suspected abuses via our text tips hotline, our family services unit, or calling 911 if you actually witness an assault in progress.
Kelly confirmed that any reporting party or domestic violence victim will not be asked about immigration status.
What is most important to us is that we know who the victims are and that these victims trust us to do the right thing by them and their families.
Middlesex County District Attorney Marion Ryan spoke about a few local cases of violence against women that were reported in the media. She stressed that we have to look at the cultural messages that condone this kind of masculine behavior.
We don't have a lot of men who have mental health issues, substance issues, who cut up other men and put them in suitcases, who hold them hostage in apartments for days. So this really matters. This is about not just doing this. It is about thinking about what it means to be a man. What is the message that society gives to men? Is it that it's okay to be forceful? It's okay to tell that bad joke? It's all right to be disrespectful? Because that's the message.
Brendan Riley, Chief of Security at Lowell General, said that it's up to all of us to model behavior for the younger generation.
We today have an advantage that the generations of men that came before us didn't have. We know better now. We understand the issues, and what we can do as a community, especially here in Lowell, is work together and model the way. Own your mistakes. Every one of us up here today, I'm certain, have said and done things that were out of bounds. But you own that, you learn from it, you don't repeat that behavior, and you model the way for younger people.
To close the ceremony, men and boys of all ages took the White Ribbon Day pledge to be a part of the solution to end violence against women and all gender-based violence.
The importance of respecting women and girls. I realize that when I don't speak out against domestic violence and sexual assault, I'm essentially supporting it.
Nonprofit organizations regularly hold fundraising events to supplement their yearly budgets. The Brush Art Gallery holds a unique annual fundraiser to support its scholarship and teaching programs. It's called 4x4 for Education.
This is an example of a classic landscape painted onto the canvas. And notice the edges are all painted so that it looks finished. You don't need a frame. We take a 4x4 canvas and we do a call, and artists sign up for the canvases.
Artists pick up a blank canvas and then have about a month to create their artwork. They donate the finished 4x4 back to the Brush Gallery.
I love fall leaves, so I did it in the fall leaf colors, and I used real leaves in the 4x4.
Here's an example of someone that's done some metal work. So the background is painted out in black, and then that makes the metal work stand out. They can do a painting, a sculpture. We have a lot of quilters that stitch things, metal, just about anything. So this artist put a vase, because she's a ceramic artist, she put a vase right inside the canvas.
I've done a little beach scene, which was done from a photograph I took on one of my vacations.
So this artist printed their photo on canvas. Some artists get political. This one's neutral, it just says vote. This one is a little bit one-sided.
Although I am a jeweler, I had a lot of sterling silver pieces left over. So I decided I would make a tree, a sterling silver tree, and with copper.
This artist is a sculptor, so he used part of the canvas, he used part of the frame, so he's qualified. But then he worked his sculpture around that.
It's acrylic, and I use some glitter, and I tried to use all my fun colors. That's kind of my thing.
Tickets are only sold on the day of the event at the designated time.
At 2 o'clock, we have a line going out the door.
All the ticket buyers' names are added to a jar. When all the tickets are sold, the fun begins.
As we draw your name, you can go through the line and pick out your favorite canvas.
The buzz in the room is incredible. The energy, everybody's excited.
When their names are called, there's usually people cheering, and they do get very excited.
A lot of people have lists of their favorite pieces. They're all numbered.
I have a list of numbers that I usually pick, and then if none of them are there, I have to be quick about picking something else.
I will have 30 seconds to come and peruse what is left.
You watch in anticipation as each person before you gets theirs, wondering if one of your favorites is still going to be available for you.
Everyone that buys a ticket leaves with a beautiful canvas. Some buyers return year after year to build their own 4x4 collections.
And it's a great way for inexpensively collect artwork from your favorite artists.
I actually have quite a collection of 4x4s at my house. They're really easy to put around in different places. Between my husband, myself, and my 2 teen daughters, we have quite a few.
The money raised from the event helps support the gallery's scholarship and education outreach programs.
And $1,000 goes to a UMass art student, and that happens every year. And then right now we have an art program at Megan's house, which is a treatment facility for women with opiate addiction, and we offer art classes 3 times a month.
The event is open to the public, but tickets are limited to the number of canvases available. As an added attraction, UMass Lowell faculty artwork will be on display in conjunction with the 4x4 exhibit through April 20th. In this week's Sunspot, Lowell Sun Enterprise editor Chris Scott sits down with Jim Cook, executive director of the Lowell Plan.
Good evening, everyone. I am Chris Scott, the enterprise editor at the Sun. Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of Sunspot. If you're keeping count, this is the 88th episode, and with me tonight is a very special guest. I've never had this person on before, and that's my fault because he certainly is informed and knows where all the bodies are buried. Jim Cook from the Lowell Plan. Thank you
Chris.
for coming in.
Glad to be here.
He's also a former assistant city manager under the days of Joe Tully and Jim Campbell, correct?
Correct, yeah, long time ago.
So the issue that we're going to talk about this evening is really something. It's not so much related to the Lowell Plan as it is to city government and city government's partnership with agencies and entities like the Lowell Plan. Mm-hmm. You have been appointed to a task force that's really trying to take a serious look at the city's homeless population and taking a look at the Lowell Transitional Living Center on Middlesex Street.
Correct.
Now, this has been on your desk for many, many years, even going back decades when you were at City Hall. What's different about this particular effort, or what the objective of this effort from previous efforts to address this issue?
Well, the objective here is to make sure that services are provided to the people that need them. And what we've noticed over the past 4 or 5 years, and probably longer, is you see very familiar faces when you walk through the downtown. People that have been homeless for some time, which, again, I'm not in that social service business, so I've never actually worked in or run a shelter. But it leads us to believe that they're not getting the services they need to break that cycle. In some cases, finding them housing, finding them a job, or in other cases, finding them addiction services or mental health counseling. Yeah. So trying to break that cycle. So you have right now, I think it was said that it was 90 people that would live there on any given day. And that number's grown. And it should be shrinking. But again, it's lack of services. So what we're trying to look at now, as opposed to just say, the shelter doesn't belong there, we're saying, we need to find the services that could be available to support people that have homelessness issues. And it's not just a Lowell Transitional Center, because there are tent cities that have popped up in other locations along the
All
Merrimack
across,
River,
right.
along
The canals,
along the canals,
the railroad tracks.
So it's people that are homeless and they have issues, and some of them really need some help, and they're not getting any.
Let's just talk just a little bit about history for a second. I can recall when Alan Kazanjian was on the city council and he filed a motion to move the Lowell Transitional Living Center to Tewksbury State Hospital, and that didn't even move off the dime, and that elicited some pretty sharp responses from the late Tewksbury State representative at the time, Jim Maselli. Do you acknowledge that the current location of the Lowell Transitional Living Center on Middlesex Street, literally in the shadow of a new $220 million courthouse? I mean, driving up Middlesex Street, the juxtaposition of the shelter right here and then the courthouse is really quite startling. And I can't discount the timing of the effort with the shelter. I'm not with the judicial center.
Yeah.
You know, not implying that there's something nefarious there or anything like that, but it's startling to see that building right there and then this brand new.
Well, it's certainly no surprise to anybody that it's not conducive to economic development or economic development opportunities, but it really does not have anything to do with the Judicial Center opening up there. What the breakthrough here is that we finally have recognition from SMOC that is running the Lowell Transitional
That's
Center.
the acronym for the owner of the shelter.
That's correct. And Jim Cuddy, who's the director, has been working with us on this, and he is committed to implementing changes that would be recommended through a consultant that's just been retained. And that's a significant change from anything we've dealt with in the past. Because before it was always a little bit of a tug of war. And right now you have a director saying, you're right, the trend now is to find housing, is to find services. And you know, I don't think our location works. That came from them, not us. And that's where that was the breakthrough. That's where I think we all agreed to now we all need to sit down and find out how to provide those services, where there could be funding for services, and how to minimize that impact.
I think your position on the task force is unique in that you can see it from with you wearing your former hat as a top city planning official, but also as someone who's connected with the downtown business community, with restaurants, with bankers, with other service providers. Without naming any names, or because I know you're bound by some confidentiality, but some horror stories have come across your desk of, unfortunately, homeless people in the downtown.
Yeah.
Once the shelter at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. when the homeless folks are
7 a.m. they have to leave.
They have to leave, and I hate to use the word they in reference to these folks, but I don't mean them any disrespect. They disperse through the downtown, and maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
Well, none of this is intended to disrespect anybody.
Of course not, yeah.
There's a very humane problem here, a very humane issue that has to be dealt with. But when people have to leave the site, when the residents that are staying overnight at the shelter have to leave at 7 in the morning and they can't come back till 4 in the afternoon, even in the winter months, where do they think they're going to go? I mean, there's obviously, they're in the downtown, they're at a downtown location, so they have to go out somewhere and find something to do. So you've seen an increase in that over the years, not a decrease, which again, to my mind, says something clearly isn't working. And then when you add to that the opioid addiction issue that's grown substantially over the past 10 years or so. So you have a number of people that are in the downtown that aren't threatening anybody, and if you actually talk to the police department about the number of incidents, it's small. But there's a perception because there are people that are going into some of the restrooms.
Restaurants?
Restrooms.
Oh, restrooms, okay.
And overdosing. And there are people that have gone into some of the restaurants, mentioned restaurants.
And you've heard this directly from these folks, right?
Oh, I've actually seen it.
Okay.
So I've been in a restaurant where people came in and went around from table to table.
That's got to be
It's,
a little
it's,
bit
it's not a
unsettling.
good environment, and again, it's not fair to the residents of the shelter. It's not fair to the stores and the restaurants and shops that are trying to support themselves, and it just seems to be a mix that clearly is not working for anybody, for both sides. So we're focusing again more on services. And this isn't about getting rid of the shelter. This is about how do we make it better for the people that are staying overnight in the shelter, because these are all single adults. There are temporary housing units for families that and CTI has done a great job with veterans.
One of the
CTI has
partners
done
at the
a
table.
great job with families that are all of a sudden homeless. But single adults is where there's a lack of housing opportunities, or just a lack of opportunities, period. And so I think the city manager's put a number of people on this working group that can provide the services you
Well,
have.
let's talk about that for a minute. There's CTI, right? There's the Greater Lowell Community Foundation.
Right.
There's Lowell General Hospital.
Community Health Center.
Community Health Center, just to name a few. I'm sure Lowell Housing Authority.
Lowell Housing
is another
Authority,
one.
correct, the Planning and Development Office. So I think you've got people that have far more knowledge and information than I have on how to correct the problem. But and they have some access to resources, which is very important.
And knowing where to look.
Yeah, and knowing where to look, and what grant program to look for. The net result here needs to be that it's not just a streamlined shelter. I don't call it a shelter; it's called the Lowell Transitional Center. But
that's what it used to be called.
Well, transitional doesn't mean you're staying there 3 or 4 years. So, I think the ultimate goal here, and I think what we'll see achieved, is that there's going to be an increase in the quality of services that are provided for people that have become homeless, single adults, that they can get help, that they can get the treatment they need, that they can find a housing opportunity, and then along with that, a job opportunity. So clearly it's to better the situation that exists right now.
You were among several city officials who came to the Sun earlier this week to talk about the initiative, and I happened to mention, boy, wouldn't it be something if this initiative, not to create a negative connotation, but put the Lowell Transitional Living Center out of business, meaning its services weren't required or
yeah,
not.
well, and
Jay
that's a
Linehan
clear
from-
distinction. That's a
Jay
clear
Linehan
distinction.
from the Greater Lowell Community Foundation said, well, that wouldn't be a bad thing if that happened.
Yeah.
Just how realistic do you think it is that, one, the Lowell Transitional Living Center might in fact move from that location to someplace else, where it's not in the heart of the downtown business district, and two, that its services significantly might not be as required as they are now. And unfortunately, we only have 2 minutes left, so
Yeah, well,
you have the floor.
I don't think it's anybody's goal, and it's not a realistic goal to even discuss getting rid of the transition. That is not what this is about. What the hope is that if all of these services are provided, there'll be less of a need for one. But there'll always be a need for one, because you're always still going to have people that end up in some terrible situations, or they end up in a situation where they're homeless and they need some quick emergency shelter. That is a need that is not going to go away across the country. But what we're trying to find is a solution to having that becoming a sustained kind of thing, so that you may need housing and you may even need to be there for a week or two. But if you're quickly assimilated into a housing unit where you've got some services, then you'll see less of a need for certainly 90 residents a night staying at a center.
You've been around for many years, both at city government and in the nonprofit world. How confident are you that this initiative will achieve its objective?
Well, I'm very confident, because we have the director of the agency that runs it, very involved in promising and committing to implementing the recommendations. That's huge.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of LTC News. You can find us on LTC channels 8 and 99, online at ltc.org, on Roku in the LTC News playlist, or on Facebook at LTC Lowell. I'm Alanna Flood. Thanks for joining us.
And other disparaging comments that have no place on the field, in the classroom, or at home. Say no more to violence against women and girls by placing the no more symbol to bring attention to ending domestic violence and sexual assault.